Good afternoon, everyone. How is everyone doing? Welcome back to another episode of FinTalk. I'm your host, Renata Joy, and I'm really excited about today because today is a big milestone. Today is our last day as we're wrapping up this series, and it's also the last day of Financial Literacy Month. So we're ending this on a high note with a topic that's really important. It's more than important, it's very essential for securing your financial legacy. So allow me to read our guest bio so that we can bring her on in the conversation. Joining us is Max Elliott, managing attorney of the law offices of Max Elliott Ltd, is an Illinois licensed attorney whose firm serves clients in Illinois, New York, Florida, and internationally. Specializing in estate planning, administration, and small businesses, she draws from various experiences, including several years as general counsel for a celebrity associated foundation, presenting nationally year round and holding leadership roles with legal associations. Ms. Elliott contributes expertise to colleagues on planning for small businesses, multinational couples, and the LGBTQ community. Recognized with accolades like the Super Lawyers, Ms. Elliott is also an American Bar Foundation Fellow and a Marquis Who's Who in America inductee. So join me and let's give Max a warm welcome as we have this compelling discussion tonight to crafting your legacy with estate planning in mind. Hi, Max. How are you?
I am doing so well, Renata. Thank you so much again for allowing me this opportunity to share the knowledge and insights that I have gained during my tenure as an estate planning attorney. I really do appreciate the opportunity and hope that you and your guests will find at least some of this information helpful. So why don't we just kind of jump right into it? I
Okay.
have to give a disclaimer, of
Okay.
course. This is for educational purposes only. No client attorney client relationship has been established or will be established, even if you ask a really good question. So just kind of keep that in mind. You told them about me. The only thing that I would like to share is that I love action movies. Okay, I'm an action movie junkie,
What's your
even
favorite?
really bad ones.
What's your
So,
favorite?
so just wanted to share that. So, and a little bit about our firm. It's diverse. Black owned, woman owned, attorneys and staff are diverse. Our clientele is diverse socioeconomically and nationally. So we run the gamut from modest estates to ultra high net worth individuals. 12 plus years, almost 13 now, and you know the rest. So I want to talk first of all about estate planning fundamentals. Some of you may find this information boring, which I would hope because that means you're well on your way with respect to estate planning. But others, I always think that it's important to start out with some fundamentals so we're all on the same page as we go along. So, who, what, when, and why with respect to estate planning. First, we need to talk about the folks. Who are these people involved in estate planning other than the attorney, right? So we have heirs. During my law school career, one of the first questions I was asked in a group was anybody here heirs? So asking you that. Are you an heir? Do you have heirs? As a matter of fact, that's the big question. Do you have any heirs? If you raise your hand, you're wrong. You don't have an heir until you pass away. So if you're a ghost, then yeah, you have heirs. But hopefully everybody here is alive and kicking. You don't have any heirs just yet. So your heirs are, of course, those who inherit from you biologically through blood or through adoption. Fiduciaries are those folks who will act legally on your behalf if A, you just don't want to do it anymore, and that means managing your affairs, or you are incapacitated or hospitalized and you need somebody to act on your behalf, pay your bills, for example, see after your children, or you have a large estate and you need a trustee to manage it for you, even though you're alive, then that would be a fiduciary. And upon your passing, it would be an executor or a successor trustee. Okay. So those are the people. Creditors are also very important people with respect to estate planning, and I'll get to that in a couple of seconds. So, what's an estate? An estate is everything that you own. At the very beginning of my law firm career, folks would come to me and say, "Well, I don't have an estate. I really don't need your services, but I'm going into the hospital, so I guess I need somebody to make decisions for me," right? Well, if you own a bicycle, if you own some books, if you own a cell phone, if you have life insurance, you have an estate. It's not necessary.
Cell phone?
Yes,
Wait a minute.
yes, exactly. So a cell phone, books paid on Kindle, Renata, those are digital assets. We're in the 21st century now. And so, so those are what we call digital assets. And as a matter of fact, you are not able, you're really not lawfully allowed to access someone else's cell phone, someone else's tablet, someone else's computing device or MacBook, unless you have power of attorney to do so outside of their presence. And it has to be specific congressional, US congressional language providing you with that authority. So, yeah,
Wow.
people kind of don't understand that. Um, Frozen eggs or reproductive material, yes. Even not necessarily reproductive material, but just frozen material that's stored. So think about it. If you're in the hospital and they take blood and they put it in, take your blood and they put it in their freezer, that's your genetic material, and that's actually part of your estate. So, yeah, we're in the 21st century, so so this is some of the things that are really important for people to keep in mind. Everyone has an estate. Okay, what's an estate plan? Again, it's a plan that takes care of you, your estate, and your loved ones. Determines who receives your estate, who gets what, when. It protects you. Like I said, if you're in the hospital, you need folks to act on your behalf, to liaise with the doctors, make sure that the doctors are doing what you want them to do, right? And it also does its best to prevent family feuds. If you have a comprehensive estate plan, 9 times out of 10 we can prevent a family feud from erupting. The other, just so you know, the other half of my practice, as Renata stated, is probate, estate administration, and family feuds are actually what informs my estate planning practice. And unfortunately, it is a very vibrant part of my firm's practice. So when do you need an estate plan? And I'm going to touch on this a little later, but you need an estate plan if you are age of majority. So depending on your jurisdiction, if you're 18 in Illinois, 18 in Florida, 18 in New York, you need an estate plan because nobody's going to be able to make decisions on your behalf unless you actually have it memorialized in a power of attorney, for example, a healthcare proxy, for example. Your mother and father are not going to be able to get information from you from the hospital or from the doctors for you if you are hospitalized and you are over the age of 18 and they are not on your HIPAA forms. And that's one of the acronyms that I'm going to use, and I'm not going to explain it. I think you kind of get the gist of it, right?
Yeah.
If you're partnered, whether you're cohabiting or married, separated from blood family, I have a lot of clients with chosen families. Yep, that's the thing, and we provide estate plans for them. Do you have do you have fur babies? You may not have a child, you may not have grandchildren, you know, you may be an only child, but do you have a dog? You have a fur
There you
baby?
go. So my dog is could be part of my. I would have never. I hope everyone that's listening that you're taking copious notes because I'm learning a lot. Like even my fur baby,
Yes.
I didn't realize that.
Yes, they're very important, and we need to plan for them as well. So from fur babies to businesses, right? So from bulldogs to businesses, if that's what you have, you need an estate plan. So and then why, right? So you kind of heard me talk a little bit about why. So there are three P's. The first P is to protect your stuff. I mentioned creditors. Estate planning doesn't really help you protect your stuff from your creditors, but it does help protect your beneficiaries' inheritance from their creditors. And I know that's kind of counterintuitive, but if you think about it, life insurance, it flows directly to the beneficiary. The decedent's loved one, departed loved ones, creditors can't touch it. It's all of the beneficiaries. For the beneficiaries, if we put a spendthrift provision in a will or a trust, and that's the kind of provision that says, no, none of the fruits of my labor get to pay for my child's credit cards, right? So it protects your beneficiaries from creditors. It protects your stuff if you are hospitalized and you have a financial power of attorney, which you can determine the scope of authority on. So your agent acting on your behalf can pay your bills and access your account in order to do so in any way, lawful way that you determine. So if you say only by ACH, only by checks that are already that are taken to the institution, and they fill it out, cashier's checks, and then they mail them, that's how it can be done. So it protects your assets also while you are incapacitated. Protects your loved ones. Again, I just mentioned that we serve chosen family members. So those are individuals who are not necessarily related to us by blood, but who we have a deep affinity for. And so it helps if we want to provide for them and not provide for the sibling who tried to kind of like run us over with their car, right? I'm just pulling things out of my head. That didn't happen to me, so but I,
Like
but
action movies. I'm like, where did this one come from?
right, exactly. Those action movies, I tell you. So it protects your loved ones. Let's say, grandma has a new best friend from church, right? Who is now visiting grandma a lot. Oh, I like this. I like that. You have a lovely home. If we help grandma, who has capacity, prepare an estate plan, we can ensure that that new best friend from church may get a nice little cup or saucer, but won't get the house, right? So we definitely, it helps, like I said, protect our loved ones. It also helps protect folks from unknown family members. I've had a couple of cases where I've provided estate plans because somebody from Ancestry.com knocked on the window. And you don't know what's going out there, who's going to find you. And it can be a very awkward situation. So make sure that, with your estate plan, you can define who your family is and make sure that it's not somebody from Ancestry.com
What
who
happens if
isn't.
somebody from ancestry.com comes up and I guess they have this paperwork proof that that is my grandmother?
If grandmother has an estate plan and that person is not named in the estate plan, then that person may be able to bring a challenge if there are no siblings to grandmother, if the if parents have predeceased, and then there's only the grandchild left, and then there's another grandchild, well, that other grandchild does have what we call standing, the right to bring a challenge. But if that person is not mentioned in a last will and testament or a trust, and there are provisions that clearly spell out these are my beneficiaries and nobody else, then that person will not prevail with respect to their challenge. Um, and if they, so just because you find a loved one on ancestry.com does not necessarily mean you will inherit from them. The only time that is feasible is if they do have standing and there's no estate plan. Then, yeah, they get a share of the estate. So if they can prove that they actually are on the line of kinship or heirship, as we say in Illinois, they do. In New York, it's kinship. So, yeah, some interesting. This is the 21st century. I'm
Yeah,
telling
they didn't
you.
have this years ago. So when I saw it, I'm like, wow. I mean, it's. I'm glad that you shedding light on this.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear about that. Ancestry.com knocking on the door. So, again, the other reason why, and you just heard me kind of mention it a few times, you need an estate plan is to avoid probate. Everybody has an estate plan. Probate is the default estate plan. So if you don't have it written and memorialized somewhere and it's not comprehensive and solid, the default estate plan are the laws of descent and distribution in each state. Probate in Illinois, California, New York, and Florida is lengthy and costly. And it's also, of course, as you can probably imagine, angst ridden because in Illinois, assets are frozen. They're also frozen in New York. The period, it's easy to get into probate, but once you're in probate, it takes a long time, like 2 years is the average time for opening to closing that court process. When I say it's costly, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars. So, it can be for modest estates. If the family gets along and somebody just forgot to prepare an estate plan, then it's less than $10,000, but it's definitely more than an estate plan. If there are members who don't get along, or somebody comes out the woodwork, or there was a tax issue, you're talking tens of thousands of dollars. Contentious probate matters can run anywhere from $30,000 on up.
Wow.
So,
And like you said, the time too, in addition to.
exactly. Contentious matters run anywhere from five years on. And so just think about attorneys being on the clock for that long. Yeah. Um, so, why do you need an estate plan? Another reason to provide a legacy. What do you value, right? Other than your stuff, what do you value? Education, financial independence, self-reliance, philanthropy. An estate plan will allow you to address these particular types of legacies. One, two, combination of all of the above. It also provides you with peace of mind. Clients do, I hear it a lot. Oh, now I can sleep. I have an estate plan. Now I can sleep. So it provides you with a peace of mind because you know if you go into the hospital, you have somebody who's going to take care of things. You know if you become incapacitated, you have somebody you can depend on to make sure that you are cared for, whether it's cognitively and physically, or just physically, or just cognitively. You know you have somebody who will help you maintain a quality of life that is comfortable. Upon your passing, you know that your estate will go to those who you intend for your estate to go to, and not to the courts. So peace of mind. Okay. Common estate planning misconceptions, right? This is also known as the depressing part of the conversation because I have to bust myths. So here's one. A last will and testament avoids probate. I hear this a lot in initial consultations. Well, I'll just put my home in my will, and that's fine, right? I'll just say who gets my house, and I'll be good to go. No, because most states have a provision in their law that stipulates if your home is owned by you individually, then it is subject to probate. If it's owned by you by yourself upon death, it is subject to probate. If you own more than 30, 50, $100,000 in assets and there is no designated beneficiary, then your estate, even if you don't own a home, your estate is subject to probate. So a will is just like not going to, it's not going to avoid probate. It's not an automatic probate avoidance mechanism, to say the least. It does, set out your intentions. It allows individuals with children to nominate guardians. So when I'm talking about children, I'm talking about minor children. If you have little ones, then you can nominate who's going to take care of them upon your passing, or if you're married or partnered, upon your simultaneous passing. And also, one of the things that is coming into play, or has come into play over the years, is fighting over what happens with the body. Right? So a last will and testament gets rid of that fight because your executor has the last word, and it's generally what you stipulate. I actually had somebody who was so concerned about their family members fighting, they had a prototype of their obituary attached to their last will and testament, making it legally binding.
Right. Wow.
So, yeah, so that's a misconception. Another misconception, as we talk about trust, are that revocable living trusts are asset protection mechanisms. Asset protection and estate planning, though related, are different, very different. The primary purpose of a revocable living trust is to avoid probate. It is a probate avoidance mechanism. Uh, if it's a living trust, there's very little that you can do uh, about income tax issues. So if you have income tax issues, tax matters, there's very little you can do with a living trust. Uh, Medicaid, I've had individuals contact me. Um, I'm heading, my grandmother's getting older. I want to put her, we want to put it into a trust so that the house isn't taken. And how old is grandma? Grandma is 70 years old. Okay. So if we think about life expectancies, sometimes they're around 70, sometimes they're less than 70. Medicaid has a 60-month look back period. So if we put it in trust and grandma passes at 72 and grandma's on Medicaid, then Medicaid will have a lien on the property, and and somebody's going to have to pay Medicaid back. And if the property needs to be sold in order to pay Medicaid back, that's what will happen. So again, the primary purpose of a revocable living trust is to avoid probate. You can also establish legacies through a living trust because, unlike a last will and testament that is subject to state law, that is subject also to probate, so it's got to end, that estate administration has to end sometimes or often, except for a couple of areas, but it generally has to end. A revocable living trust upon your passing can be a dynastic trust if it is properly established. So, and so that's that's a really important characteristic. And the last important characteristic is that it also helps you to maintain privacy. A last will and testament is filed with the county. So anybody who knows about your death can go to the county, or know about grandma's death can go to the county clerk, give them ID, ask to see the last will and testament, get to see everything that grandma owns, who's getting what, and so forth. A trust is not filed with anybody. Everything that is, all of the distribution schemes, all of the disinherited beneficiaries, everything like that is very private. So you don't have to worry about somebody coming after grandma's china or beautiful home. So it's really important. And I have seen wills from a long time ago, before identity theft became prevalent, with social security numbers in them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really, if you are really concerned about privacy, or if you just normally concerned about privacy, or you just want to avoid probate, which is a good thing, I think living trusts are very helpful. Um, okay, yeah, another misconception, especially with my, let's say, younger clients who still think that they're invincible. So simultaneous death or disability will not occur. That's just how we are when we're young, right? We are completely invincible. We have like the shield from Captain America and the hammer from Thor. We're all good, right? Black Panther. So we're fine, but that's not reality. Those are action movies. Natural disasters, COVID-19. Think of what happened during COVID-19. Small families, if everybody in the family unfortunately succumbed, a number of families were wiped out. Tornadoes, hurricanes, right? Natural pianos falling from the sky. That's kind of like my analogy. You get into a car crash and your loved one is in a car crash with you. Hospitalizations gone very wrong. And unfortunately, we are in the time of mass shootings. So these things can happen. We cannot predict what's going to happen the minute we walk out of the safe zone area that we're in. I cannot predict what's going to happen when I walk out this door. And so estate planning is crucial. Uh, we just can't predict. So that feeling of invincibility, need to get over that. You're not, unfortunately, invincible. I wish you were. Okay, and this is one of my favorites too. Uh, you can just trust your children to just do the right thing, and pigs fly, right? You know. Remember, I talked about the other side of my practice.
Mm-hmm.
Sibling rivalry is it's really tragic. It is heartbreaking, but it happens more often than people actually realize and understand. So if you have an estate plan established, you don't have to trust your children to do the right thing. You can just tell them to do it, and they will, right? They have to. Okay. So estate planning and financial freedom, which I also like to kind of think about as how estate planning can keep the zombies away. Um, I was at a financial, really large financial house, had a seminar or a discussion, and one of the speakers discussed shocks to the economic system, and how individuals need to prepare and be prepared for shocks to the financial system. And that got me thinking about estate planning
Mm-hmm.
and how it integrates with financial planning, like you very well know, Bernardo. So, for example, can you and your family withstand shocks, medical emergencies, right? day in a hospital, 2,800, almost $2,900. Average stay, 4.5 to 5 days. That's $12,000, almost $13,000. Can your family afford that? If you have certain estate planning instruments in place, like powers of attorney for financial matters and healthcare proxies, working with a financial professional, you can craft a way to withstand that kind of shock, right? What about your head of household's death or incapacity? If you don't have a purposeful estate plan, then again, we talked about probate. It is costly, lengthy, and angst ridden. And that's just when somebody passes away. I didn't talk about disabled individuals in guardianship, right? And we're starting to see that individuals who are cognitively impaired with dementia or Alzheimer's, which is a disease, is like a sub disease of dementia, are living a lot longer because of the treatments and medication. And if there is no purposeful estate plan in place, if there is no powers of attorney in place, then that particular loved one becomes subject to guardianship, where the court gets to decide exactly how much is going to be spent on the particular loved one. May decide that your loved one must sell their home and go into a nursing home because there is no purposeful estate plan and there are lack of resources. Britney Spears has a lot of resources, but she's still subject to guardianship because of the situation that arose when she was young, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
And so it's, and that's another tragedy because we have elders who, but for a purposeful estate plan combined with financial planning, are losing their homes because they need resources to be placed in a nursing home.
Right.
So
Can't assume that you're going to outlive them, because what if it's the reverse and now they're still here and their same quality of life they no longer can have, and like you said, they're subjected to somebody else who doesn't have they have their best interest from a state level, but from like a family level they don't have their best interest. So yeah, that was a great point to bring up.
yeah, thank you. Yes, no, there is the best interest, and you brought up the standard. It is the best interest standard. But as I tell my clients, I don't know your family as well as you know your family, and a judge knows them even less.
Mhm.
So we can, even as lawyers, we can only take you so far when there is no estate plan in place. Um, so, can your family withstand the shocks? Market crash. Pick your market: the stock market, the crypto market, the housing market. We have seen crashes, I want to say over the last 15 years, that hit on all of this. And so it's really important for your estate planning attorney to work with a financial professional to make sure that you can withstand these particular types of shocks, right? During the housing crisis, I was doing foreclosure defense with respect in conjunction with probate because individuals passed away, not letting their beneficiaries or their heirs know that their homes were subject to foreclosure. So the beneficiary or the heir thought that they were getting a home and they would just have to continue paying the mortgage. Well, no, we actually need to claw it back from the bank in foreclosure. So now we're looking at two court matters. If you have an estate plan in place, there's a way that you can sometimes keep that from happening, right? So it's really important. Financial freedom in my opinion, is the ability to withstand the shocks. If you can withstand the shocks, you can sleep at night and you can keep going. And then once the shock is over, you're on an even higher trajectory than others who have to start over,
Mhm.
right? So I think it's really important. Loss of wages. People lose jobs, right? And so one of the strategies that we use is to have separate plans for individuals or couples who are still in their wealth accumulation phase. There are also tax reasons for that. Oh, and asterisk, I'm not a CPA, so I just wanted to put that out there. But as an estate planning attorney, I have to know much more than the usual attorney, because there is such an integration between estate planning and tax planning. So back to our strategy, separate plans. So if one partner loses their job, and part of that wealth accumulation is stalled for a little while, at least the other partner's plan is still intact, and we can work together with a financial professional to kind of mitigate the damages. Separate accounts, right? If one partner loses their job and then the creditors start knocking on the door, they're only going to knock on one account's door. They're not going to knock on the other account's door, right? We have assets that pass by operation of law. So if, for example, one partner loses their job and they are the ones who actually are on the deed, oh, we have to change that and make sure that property will transfer via what we call operation of law, and that is avoiding probate, to the other partner in the event of that unemployed partner's death. Change the percentage on LLCs. Right? If you own property and one of your partner loses their job, so they can't help maintain the property in the LLC, woo, change that membership percentage. So those are some of the strategies that are very important in helping us withstand the shocks. So I mentioned taxes. And so I always want to let folks know this is not about how to avoid paying taxes. And I have a little saying at the very end, so I'm not going to steal my own thunder, but we don't avoid taxes. I've had people. I think it's um, something that even maybe the IRS or the government do once a year. They pick estate planning attorneys and they phone them up pretending to be a client, and they say, "Hey, I want you to help me, create an estate plan where I don't have to pay any taxes." I don't do that because that's actually unlawful. So that's not what I do. I can help you maximize the after tax value of your estate, right?
So we're going to do things legally.
Exactly. There was a 60 Minutes program several years ago, and they actually caught an attorney who I was acquainted with because he was high up in the American Bar Association, and I said, "Oh my goodness!" So no, we don't do that. We maximize the after tax value of your estate. So, and speaking of that, and speaking of grandparents and assets, the Secure Act is a is an IRS law that basically upended 70% of estate planning work back in 2020 when it was effectuated. Before the Secure Act, a non-spouse beneficiary could inherit retirement assets and stretch those retirement assets, stretch that inheritance across over their lifetime, right? Over the span of their lifetime. When the Secure Act was effectuated, That law was, that provision was repealed, and they gave us five EDBs, eligible designated beneficiaries. I don't know why they kept the spouse and they counted the spouse as an designated beneficiary, an eligible designated beneficiary, because spouses always could do that. But children who are minors, and the Secure Act actually considers a minor someone who is under the age of 26. So,
They're,
per
co-
the
they're in college or
I think it may be because there's a state out there where that's actually the case.
mm,
And it could be college, but most folks are, yeah, most folks are finished around 22 or 23. So that's a good question. But I think I heard that it's because somewhere in some crazy state, there is a law that stipulates that a minor is deemed to be the age, someone who is under the age of 26.
wow.
It's bizarre, but it actually is beneficial in terms of planning, especially for financial professionals like yourself who can go into any jurisdiction. Because if you think about it, before, in a number of states it's 18, but in some other states it's 16, and then in other states it's 21. So here the Secure Act has said no, it's 26. Period. Stop. So that at least provides some consistency.
Hmm.
But what it what it did, as you probably know, it it truncated the time by which one can stretch out
Hmm.
your that those assets. For minors, it's 10 years after the date of death, after you reach age of majority. So it's up to age 36 for minor children of the plan participant. It's also, the spouse has an unlimited, so again, I don't know why they included spouses, but then disabled individuals, chronically ill individuals, and individuals who are not more than 10 years your junior. So for some of us that could be siblings, for others that could be partners who we are not married to, right? And so these individuals have the ability to stretch it out over their lifetime. Other than that, cousins, grandchildren, no, you have to take it out within 10 years. So, because of that, there are two types of trusts that allow us to actually accumulate that income if there's more than one beneficiary, or at least accumulate the principal if there's only one beneficiary. And then we strategize on how to kind of spin down those trusts, especially for children, because they're going to be ending in 10 years. So that's one way, though. But if you can accumulate that income, you're accumulating that income inside a trust tax free. So that is maximizing the after tax value of your estate as assets appreciate. That appreciation is not being taxed. That is actually maximizing the after tax value of your estate. Also, there are provisions we call powers of appointment. And if you okay, so I'm probably dating myself. I don't care. I used to play the game hot potato. Okay, and so if you know the game hot potato, it's a bunch of friends, and you're holding a hot potato, and you have to pass the hot potato until, and not drop it.
Right.
Okay, so that's the point. Don't drop the hot potato. Well, if we think of a beneficiary share as a hot potato, and dropping it creates a taxable event. There is a mechanism called a power of appointment that allows your trustee to pass some of the share to the beneficiary. And so the beneficiary gets to hold it. And then they can say, you can stay the trustee, or I have a trustee. And then they give their share to their trustee so that that trustee can pass it on to maybe their child. and then that child to their child. So as long as it doesn't land, that share doesn't is not owned completely. So we call it a completed gift. As long as it's not owned completely, then there is no estate tax levied on that share. Now, estate taxes right now are really high, but they're due to sunset in a year. So the estate tax exemption. So it could go back to what was it, like $675,000, and people may say, "Oh, that sounds like that. I'll never get there." But if you have life insurance and some retirement assets and a home, you're already there.
Hmm.
So we need to actually think about, and this is one of those mechanisms that people don't really think about because it is old. It's really old, and it's something that is not really talked about, you know. So powers of appointment are the it maximizes the after-tax value of your estate, and it also creates a legacy, allows you to create a legacy because there is no taxation on that interest that is going from generation to generation to generation. I love the hot potato game.
I know.
Right. Another provision for maximizing the after-tax value of your estate is what we call grantor retained annuity trust. Now, this gets into like advanced planning. Um, and you see the word annuity, so it's basically you providing yourself with an annuity and then either zeroing out your estate upon the end of the annuity's term, or you allow it to go to beneficiaries. It just depends on the term and the amount. Grantor retained annuity trusts, or GRATs as we call them, are really for individuals who have who are a high net worth. So if you have maybe $2 million in liquid assets after liabilities, then a GRAT could be something that would be beneficial to you because, like I said, you're paying yourself kind of like an annuity, but then the rest of it appreciates tax free and goes on to your beneficiaries. But this kind of trust is what we call an irrevocable trust, so you can't change it, unlike the other trust we were talking about. Um, and private foundations and family offices are also legacy building, legacy preserving institutions. So we hear a lot, at least I do, and those in our sphere, about private foundations. Everybody's heard about the Gates Foundation, right? So that's a private foundation. It is subject to a lot of rules, but because it's private, you can have family members working there, and and so you keep it all in the family. But it's also tied into what I'm going to talk about in a couple of seconds, philanthropic interests and your philanthropic endeavors. Family offices, they come in two types. One is a single family office, and the other is a multifamily office. These offices are for individuals who are ultra high net worth, which are like families who have a liquid net worth that exceeds the estate tax exemption, which right now for couples is $27 million. So if you have $30 million lying around, a family office would be perfect for you because it is a wealth management firm for your family. You not cobble together, but you bring together all of your A team, your CPA, your financial wealth professional, your estate planning attorney, and they all work for you to maintain and build and preserve, same thing, your legacy, your family's wealth. Uh, if you think of the folks who like Hershey chocolate bars,
Hmm.
we have may have a family office. A lot of newspapers. So the Tribune in Chicago's Tribune had a family office. So folks with a lot of wealth. But again, it's important to think about this, and you kind of, I think it's important for us to think about it at a micro level.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, I would love to have a family office. What can I do now to even start getting that way? Talk with a CPA, talk with a financial professional, talk with an estate planning attorney, and get them all on your team. Get them, to be part of your team. I do that routinely. So I think that's, and you can teach your children and grandchildren how to manage assets, bring them into the family office, and provide them with employment. So, okay. Your living estate plan. You heard me talk about, a lot of things that happen during your lifetime, and that's what's really important, right? So while you're still here, you have chronic illness, acute illness, disability, aging, and estate plan is critical. It is critical for you because you need people to take care of you and to take care of your assets and so forth in when those things happen. When should you update it? Last wills and testaments, increase or decrease in family size, marriage, children, widowhood, if you get divorced or you separate from your partner, you're going to need to change these instruments. Uh, some instruments change automatically, or the law says that certain things change automatically upon, for example, divorce, but not necessarily on widowhood, right? If your children are minors when you have an estate plan and now they're in their 30s, I don't think those guardianship provisions are needed. So we need to do some updating there, right? So it's really important to update your wills and keep these life events, these wonderful life events in mind. Updating a revocable living trust. So it's called revocable because you can change it. You can revoke it if you want to. Okay, and so for example, you love your children, but they burn through money,
Mhm.
right? So you're like, I was going to give them just everything outright at the age of 30, but no, maybe I think I need to make it provide a distribution at intervals, like maybe
Mhm.
every 5 years,
Mhm.
right? You love them, but they have mate selection issues. So maybe you should incorporate a provision that says it goes to my child, but in the event my child gets married and something happens to me, the trustee is to make sure that it stays with my child and their partner doesn't receive any or most of it, right? Yes, I do again. I want to give, yes, I will marry you, but I'm not going to put your children in my estate plan. You do that by yourself. You do that on your own. You get your own estate plan, right? And then what if you have family all over the world, right? What if you have family in Germany? What if you have family in Africa? What if you move to the States, you're liking it here, and you have a child here, but family lives elsewhere?
Mhm.
We need to actually just kind of craft an international estate plan for you because you don't want your loved ones to be charged with international kidnapping. You don't want that to happen, right? But you do want to make sure that they are able to take care of your child if something happens. You want to include some of your non-U.S. property in your estate. But wait, you don't want to create a foreign trust whereby the estate tax exemption has absolutely no meaning and your trust is now like subject to really, really significant taxes. So these are things that definitely require updating and thinking about.
Mhm.
So estate planning, philanthropy, and legacies. So why do you want to create a legacy involving philanthropy? Do you just want to maximize the after tax value of your estate? Do you want to benefit your community? Do you want to benefit the world? You kind of need to think about exactly how much you want to do. And that's sometimes daunting, right? Especially when you're in the wealth accumulation phase. I've had this conversation with folks and I'm like, well, you can do this, but it actually requires you to truly give away X amount of dollars. Okay. And then there's that pregnant pause and they hear that sober second thought and they're like, well, maybe we can do something else. Yes, it's definitely do it routinely, do routine giving during your lifetime. But if
Mm-hmm.
you want to really get into philanthropic estate planning, you're actually going to have to give something away now. Um, so think about that, how much and when. Um, so philanthropic vehicles, 501c3s, there are way too many of them. I think we have a 501c3 for anything that you can think about. Uh, 501c3s though are popular and they're well known.
Mm-hmm.
They come in two flavors, public charity or private charity. That private charity, the private foundation is encompassed underneath that private charity. Uh, One, the public charity, the rules are a little bit more lenient. The private charity, the rules, like I said, the regulations are really strict. LC3s. So those are LLCs that have that agree to have a low profit margin because they are actually working to benefit the community. So
Mm.
those are new animals. They're very
Okay,
interesting.
I've never heard of an LC3.
Yep. They're in, I think they're in 13 jurisdictions. So Illinois is one. So they are new. They just came out. They were just uh, approved. I want to say in 2017.
Wow.
Um, B corporations. A lot. I'm seeing a lot more B corporations, which are like LC3s, they are corporations, but they're like, we are going to be profitable. But part of our mission that is in our articles of incorporation is about benefiting a particular cause. And I think, hmm, I don't want to, I, uh, Oh, there is a sustainable shoe manufacturer that's a B corporation. They make shoes out of recycled goods
Very. Mm-hmm.
and things in the forest. So that's really something that one can do, right? If you're looking to create a legacy, because it's company, it's a business, somebody's going to have to run it, and maybe hopefully your children will, but you also want to give back. A B corporation is also a really good way to do it. Charitable remainder annuity trust, similar to GRATs, these are called CRATs. The beneficiary at the end is a charitable organization. And this is one of those instances where you don't have to give it away, but you have to create a trust that stipulates and is filed with the Attorney General. I'm going to set aside 10% of my assets, and this is what that is, right? And so, but it acts like an annuity. So you get the benefit of those assets growing, and then after that term is up, those assets go to the charity. So those are a number of ways in which philanthropy and estate planning intersect, and business planning. And I really do love to see that. So where do we start? And we're almost at the end. Where do we begin? Okay, so where can it go right? Get a lawyer. Start, get a lawyer. Be ready to confess. Tell me about your health. Tell me about your finances. Tell me about your family drama, travel, relocation. Because if I need to work with a colleague in I don't know, let's say Tennessee, I need to know that, right? If I need to work with a colleague in the Bahamas, I need to know that. So get a lawyer. Where can it go right? Really, really think about your fiduciaries when you're starting this process. During your lifetime and after, who do you trust? Who do you trust? Who do you know will take care of your finances? Who do you know will pull the plug when you want them to pull the plug, right? It's really important. Really, really think about whether or when not to share with beneficiaries. Your estate planning attorney should guide you through this thought process. But again, we don't know your families like you do. Okay. So sometimes you've given a child you've given them a deposit on their home, you paid for their college tuition, and you're like, you know what? We've set you up. We're going to leave more to the grandkids. That's fine, right? So if everybody loves everybody, share. If everybody hates everybody, please share because I don't want to see them in probate. And while you're traveling, abroad, and you haven't shared, don't. It'll ruin your vacation. Don't do that. Okay. Um, any questions before I roll into key takeaways?
Let me see. Nope, I don't see any questions.
Okay. So, some key takeaways are comprehensive estate planning helps protect you and your family from zombie apocalypses and other real world crises. Remember that. People don't like to talk about estate planning. They don't like to have this conversation sometimes because nobody wants to think about the end, which is why I think it's so important to understand that when you walk out of the door, you don't know if you're going to unfortunately get into an accident. Estate planning helps you there. We have real world economic shocks all the time. Estate planning helps you there. Estate planning doesn't come in a box. It just doesn't. Comprehensive estate planning does not come in a box, doesn't come in an online application. Real people are unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot use an algorithm to determine whether or not your two children who get along pretty well okay now will not hate each other 20 years from now. You just, or upon your passing, you just can't predict, right? And so
But
don't.
also to that same point, Max, you have a lot of online services. They're not going to give you, I wrote it down. I've been taking copious notes. So I hope those of you who are tuning in or those of you who will come back and watch the replay, take notes, go back and rewind. But one of the things that I wrote down is with the online services that they have, they're not going to give you the powers of an appointment to have that hot potato game. I mean, it's just that's too customizable. They're going to give you a one size cookie cutter experience. So I think
Mhm.
that's one of the things that you're pointing out by saying it doesn't come in a box or an online app.
Exactly. There's another provision that also helps maximize the after-tax value of one's estate, especially like I've been talking about gifting to grandchildren. Well, if you've used up your estate tax exemption and you still have grandchildren, then they will be subject, their gift will be subject to the estate tax, which if anything is subject to the estate tax right now, it's 40%. There's an estate tax mechanism called the GSTT. So the generation skipping transfer tax. If there are provisions in your trust and even in a will, if there are provisions in there, your grandchildren's inheritance will also be saved. So that's another one. No, you don't see that. You don't see that in those in the online applications and platforms. And I went through one kind of like as far as I could go to see what I would have been in probate.
Mm.
What they had me, I answered, and I answered honestly.
Mhm.
They would have had me in probate.
Wow.
So it's we have to be really careful. If you want, again, it's comprehensive estate planning, right? If you're 18, you don't own anything of substance, you're renting, you have a bike, you just want to make sure that you get, maybe mom and dad on powers of attorney, then go online. But
Mhm.
once you start accumulating wealth, once you have children, once you have a home, you have retirement assets, you have wonky things going on in your family,
Mhm.
you definitely need comprehensive estate planning. I want to say at least 60% of my practice is dealing with interesting family dynamics. So, uh, so that's, yeah, it doesn't come in a box. Um, Legacies take time, right? We all know that. You just can't create it like that. People marvel at IPOs and crypto, but it took a long time to get there. It's just like icebergs. We only see the tip. We
Mhm.
don't see that huge mountain underwater. Legacies definitely take time. Okay. This is the one about taxes. This is what I've been waiting to get to. If you can afford to pay taxes, be happy and relax. You got this, right? If you can afford to pay taxes, where do you think our roads come from? Where do you think good schools come from? Where do you think hospitals come from? They come from our taxes. If you can afford it, that's awesome, right? We're here to help you maximize the after tax value of your estate. So don't, everybody, I don't want to pay tax. No, you kind of don't want your car to get ripped up in that pothole because nobody paid their taxes. So you got this. Any other questions? Renata, do you have any other questions for
No,
me?
that was my main, first of all, I want to say thank you. This has been super informative. Like, I took a lot of notes. I didn't realize, just starting with the fundamentals in the beginning, that my cell phone and my fur baby was something that I would have thought about. But I also can imagine, my grandmother has passed, and I
Mhm.
can only imagine her having friends all of a sudden, trying
Mhm.
to be close because they're thinking they're going to be able to get the house. So
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
didn't know. So it's been very informative to me. So
Okay.
you're saying it's not an age thing. You have
No,
to look at where you're at as far as like wealth accumulation. What do you have to protect? If it's your retirement, if you have properties, if you have a loved one, these are the times that you need to reach out to someone such as yourself to get that type of strategy or consultation to talk about it.
exactly, exactly. Again, people minimize their importance. They minimize what they have because we're so busy comparing ourselves to others. Um, I tell clients to just walk around your house, think about conversations you've had with folks. Has a niece, or has your mom or somebody said something about a painting? Has somebody said something about a necklace or a sweater? Those things are really important to consider, and so you do have something, right? You do. Think about yourself,
Mhm.
right? You are also important. Well, most of us know the story of Henrietta Lacks.
Mhm.
But if we think about, like I talked about, genetic material, think about some of the illnesses and diseases that are prevalent in your family or in your ethnic group. And if it skipped you, but maybe your parent had it, you might want to think about storing some of your genetic material in case a cousin, a niece, or a nephew have that illness. You have genetic material that has been stored per your estate plan. So it might be able to actually help them.
Mhm.
These are the things that we need to think about. We have We have loved ones, unfortunately, going overseas to various wars. Reproductive, saving that reproductive material is important. That's when it often comes in. I've had clients who are members of the service, members in the military, and that's what they do because they don't know, unfortunately, if they're coming back or if they're coming back with
Hmm.
the ability to have children.
Hmm.
So, these things are important.
Yeah, I can imagine. What would you say what type of mindset should somebody come being open? And I think it's just a matter of getting connected to an attorney that makes them feel comfortable, knowing what questions to ask. Like,
Right.
some of the things that you pointed out, I'm not sure if all attorneys are as thorough. Like this was just a presentation, right? So I think to really get connected with somebody who's going to take that time. Like you said, I know you don't know what's best for my family, but at least you understand family dynamics, right? It's not just
Right.
like, all right, which let's feel like it's more than that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, estate planning is a multidisciplinary field. So you have to understand property, you have to understand tax, you have to understand retirement planning, and then you have to understand just the laws involved in the transfers of everything. You have to understand a little bit about family law as well.
And
Um,
business as well.
exactly, and business, absolutely. And so I always tell people, I don't, I can't even start to scratch the surface in a 10 or 15-minute conversation. How do you do that? And then you just ask somebody to fill out estate planning worksheets and or a preliminary intake form, and then you have a conversation and you just go for it. No, people don't necessarily understand what questions to ask, and that's where a good conversation comes into play. And I understand. I have clients who come in and they don't want to share everything, and I understand that. And that's why we have a very collaborative process. So I talk with them more than once. My team speaks with them, and we get to know them to a point as to where, okay, they're comfortable, and oh, you didn't tell me about, okay, so we're going to do it this way. And and you have to take the time. Like I said, legacies take time, and so it does take time for a really good estate plan to come about. And i I had the privilege of also working with unfortunate individuals who required a lot of client counseling while I was in law school. I have a corporate background, so I understand and can kind of hear certain things with respect to family dynamics, and that's been very, very helpful for me, and I'm very grateful to those who helped me understand that and learn those techniques. So yeah.
Wow. Well, Max, I can talk to you for hours. This put me to sleep. I I love this information. And I hope that
Sure.
all of you that are listening, whether you're listening now or if you come back, I hope that you write down your questions. Because if you look on the screen, has given you her telephone number as well as her email. I would suggest that you reach out to her with your emails if you want to ask a question or set up a time for her to do a consultation. She does. Which states were you licensed again in?
We have a presence in Illinois, New York, and Florida. We tend to, and then I also do international planning because that's federal law. And then we co-counsel with individuals in most of the major metropolitan cities throughout the United States. So, yeah, I enjoy getting questions and helping people navigate this because it's important. We are in the largest wealth transfer time in history, and I think people need to get it right. There's $84 trillion that is being transferred at this time. And I'd rather see most of that go to families instead of courts, for real.
Yeah. And I thought about when you were saying with probate, just imagine if you don't have this and you have a family, they're not able to actually get access to this for years. And at that point, who knows, what havoc it could have occurred in their life
Mm,
without them being able to have access to those resources. So think
right.
about yourself and also think about your loved ones, when you leave. The decisions that you make today will affect them as well as your community. So,
Hmm.
yeah, this has been really, really good. Max, I want to say thank you so much for saying yes and for, giving us all of your insights, this valuable information. Like, I feel armed and I need to set up a call with you. Like, this was really, really good. Good.
Well, thank you again so much for inviting me to just share. Like you said, it's important. It's important from an individual level all the way to a community and then even a national level. So, and a world level if you think about business and philanthropy. So I appreciate the opportunity, Renata. Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone who takes the time to listen and watch. So,
So
okay.
we are concluding our series. This is, like I said at the top of this is the last day of Financial Literacy Month, but this should not be the last day that you engage with this conversation. Go through and look at all of the previous conversations that we had. You can find the playlist in the FinTalk folder where you can see all of the conversations, including the one that we had tonight with Max. I mean, man, this one it really culminated the whole series. It made sense for us. So I just want to thank all of our viewers for supporting us. And thank you so much for tuning in. Stay empowered, stay encouraged, and keep filling your knowledge gaps. Just remember, you're not alone. There's a lot of resources and experts that are here to hold the space with you. Have a good night.
Thank you so much. Bye bye now. Be well.